Thank you for listening to BizPod with me, Paul.
And me, Rachel.
Our weekly business English podcast where we talk about the news, social media, and hot topics from a business point of view. You'll get a podcast and links to the articles we discuss. This way you can share your thoughts too. Join us as we discuss what's on our minds this week. So today, Rachel, we're talking about autobesity.
Ooh, autobesity.
Yeah, not obesity, but autobesity. What do you think it means?
Cars.
Yeah, basically that's what it is. We're talking about cars are getting too big for British roads.
Mm-hmm. Well, not just British roads. I think in general, when we've been driving around, we've noticed cars that we're passing on very small lanes are getting bigger.
I think sort of cars have been getting bigger and fatter for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
I think, if you're in a city and you look at the size of a parking space that's allocated for a car, that hasn't changed.
180 centimetres, apparently.
Okay.
That's the width.
Yeah. And years ago, cars would easily fit into one of those parking spaces with no problem, with loads of space all around it. But nowadays, especially the big SUVs, they don't fit into a parking spot.
Nope, absolutely. And it's getting more and more difficult, especially with the uptake of electric cars, which on top of that are not only big, but they're heavy. So there's, that's an extra element, isn't there, that adds to it, not just the fatness, but also the weight.
Yeah, but you'd think with modern materials, cars would actually be lighter than they used to be.
They should be. Mm-hmm. But are we talking about all cars, or are we just talking about luxury cars?
Well, I don't know. I mean, do you think we have a luxury car?
No.
No, that's true. But it's definitely bigger than the car we had 25 years ago.
Yes. We had a Rover Metro and a Ford Fiesta. Yeah, which was more rust than car, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's true. My first car was a Mini, but not one of the Minis that you see driving around today. This was an old Mini that was really, really small.
Yeah, and I've had a Fiat Seicento, which was minute. Couldn't fit the shopping in the boot.
Yeah, exactly. But then you drive around nowadays and you see all these SUVs and these sort of pickups, and they're just huge. They're just huge vehicles.
Mm-hmm. When I used to go to work, we used to call them cars for little darlings. It used to be the mothers going to pick up their children. They had to have a big, big car for the protection of their little darlings.
Yeah, it's kind of like a fashion statement.
Mm-hmm.
And we're reading this article about how cars have expanded.
Yeah.
And it's saying that more than half of new cars sold in 2023, this is in the UK, were too wide for the on-street parking spaces in major cities.
By 20 centimetres.
Yeah. But also I'm thinking about sort of car parks, not on-street parking, but car parks.
Mm-hmm.
Car parks are designed to cram in as many cars as possible into really small confined spaces.
Yeah.
And imagine if you have a big SUV and you go into like a multi-story car park. You're not going to find anywhere to park that's safe, that's not going to, end up with you getting your car scratched or dinged on the walls, I don't think.
Here's a memory. Do you remember when we had a Volkswagen Transporter and we went into a multi-story car park in Dijon that said it was 2 meters 20, didn't it? But it wasn't. And we got stuck under the entrance and I had to bump on the back of the vehicle, jumping up and down to sort of bob us under the entrance bar, didn't we?
That's true, yeah. Yeah, we got stuck going into a car park because the vehicle was just too high. And talking of vehicles being too high, this article that we're referring to talks about not only cars getting wider or fatter, but as they get fatter, they're also getting taller as well.
And there's an accident statistic, wasn't there? For every 10 centimetres higher the front of a vehicle is, it carries a 30% higher risk of fatalities in collisions with pedestrians and cyclists.
Yeah.
So they're getting more dangerous.
Yeah. And I think cycling in a city Well, I wouldn't say it's always been dangerous, but I think for at least for the last 20 years, being a cyclist in a big city has been a dangerous thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's only getting worse. It's only going to get more dangerous with bigger cars.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's obvious.
I got run over by the postman. Do you remember?
I do, yeah.
I was a student, yeah. And I had a nice racing bike. I had my feet in my toe clips. We came to a junction. The postman was in front of me in a van. But because I was a bicycle and he was a van, he couldn't see me. And he started reversing, and he reversed onto my bike. I couldn't get my feet out of my toe clips quick enough, and the front of my bike went under his van.
Frightening.
It was a little bit, but I got a new bike, didn't I, out of the post office? That's good.
Yeah. And another interesting part of this article that we're talking about today talks about EU and EU legislation, because the size of vehicles in the UK was governed by EU legislation.
Mm-hmm.
But the UK has just basically, after Brexit, just adopted all of this EU legislation into UK law.
Mm-hmm.
And it hasn't changed any of the legislation relating to the size of cars, which seems a bit crazy, I think. What do you think?
Well, the problem is they've got so many laws. I mean, where is it on the list? What's the priority? You know, unless people are seriously having accidents and it's causing major problems, you know, it might be number 24,000 on a list of 30,000. You know, there might be other things that are more important to decide.
That's true.
Or it could just be what I would probably expect, which is politicians just being lazy.
Yeah, possibly.
There is a part of the article that talks about some local councils. I think it was Paris, I think, was going to take a vote on tripling parking fees on SUV owners. Now, that's one point, but I'm wondering from a business point of view, how many of these SUVs are actually bought by individuals? Because they're very, very expensive. And how many are company cars? Could there not be some kind of emphasis on companies to make sure that they don't give their staff overly, excessively large vehicles? They just give them one that is suitable for getting them from A to B as they need for their job. But then the company car comes with the prestige, doesn't it? That you want a big car, you want something flashy.
Something luxurious.
Yeah.
And SUVs are very, very popular.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, is it, in your opinion, in your view, is it down to the individual responsibility, or is it down to the car manufacturers? Should they be making our cars smaller, more economical, safer and better, do you think?
Well, I mean, there is an element of safety, obviously, but I think they're just going to, like any manufacturer of any product, they're going to sell a product that they think the consumer wants. This is obviously something that consumers like, that sells well, so they're like feeding on that, and you can't really blame them. But I mean, there's going to be implications. So really, everybody's at fault: the buyer, the manufacturer, the designer, the politicians, the government.
Yeah, I understand your sentiment there, but people only want something like a bigger, fatter car when someone makes a bigger, fatter car and shows it to them, and they go, "Wow, this is great." You know, if they didn't know that there was the option of having a bigger, fatter, wider car, they would just settle for what I would class as a normal car.
Yeah, but Paul, a manufacturer is not going to go, "Oh no, let's not show people this because they might actually want to buy it."
Oh, I know they're not. But if they didn't make them, people wouldn't be able to buy them. That's the point.
Yeah, that's the chicken and egg situation, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, they are nice. I do like some of them.
Yeah, I'm sure they drive nice, and I'm sure one of the part of the element of an SUV is the safety element. You have a bigger, wider car, so if there is an accident for you and your little darlings on the school run, they're supposedly safer.
Well, I know when we went from our Rover Metro to driving the Volkswagen Transporter, I loved it because I was higher up, I had better visibility, I was big, I was red. People seemed to respect me in the vehicle more because I was clearly a big vehicle. So I can understand. I mean, as a female, I'd love to have a SUV because I think I'd feel great and really secure driving one. Can't afford one, but there we go.
Maybe you can get a job with a company car.
Oh, yeah, right. Then I'd have to work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Not going to happen, Paul.
Okay. Well, according to this vehicle, cars are still growing. by on average 1 centimetre wider each year.
Yeah.
Which, okay, every year 1 centimetre wider doesn't seem a lot, but when you multiply that by 10 years, 15, 20 years, that's a big wide vehicle.
Yeah.
And I think maybe, like in Paris, you mentioned, they're voting on tripling parking fees for SUVs sometime soon. Some of the streets in Paris are very wide, but some of the streets in Paris are very, very narrow.
Same in any city.
Yeah. And I don't think these massive SUVs, these really wide vehicles, are going to be any use for people who live in cities eventually.
No.
They're just going to be too big.
Yeah. They're all going to have to ride scooters.
Oh, no, that's another story.
I mean, look at this. In the most egregious cases, I love that word, egregious, the Land Rover Defender grew by 20.6 centimetres and the Mercedes X5 by 6 centimetres in just 6 years.
Yeah.
And what did they say was the limit? The limit is actually based on commercial vehicles, isn't it?
Yeah. So the legislation is all the rules are all based on how wide you can build a bus or a truck.
I think it was 2 meters 55, wasn't it?
I can't remember. Let's see if we can find. What does it say in here? I know it says somewhere in here. No, I can't see it.
There it is, 2 meters 55. New cars in the UK are subject to the same maximum width, 2 meters 55, as buses and trucks. That's heavy duty vehicles. It's a cap.
Yeah, yeah. So imagine if you had 2 meters 55, like a bus, a coach, or a truck. Imagine you had a car that was that wide.
Yeah, but now going back to our cars, our Rover Metro, which was very, very small in height and length, was no wider than our Volkswagen Transporter van, which was very high and very long. And we know it was the same width because we were worried about fitting it on our drive, and it fit in exactly, precisely width-wise. The width was no difference.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you think of like that particular van being huge, and I suppose compared to the Rover Metro, it was, but actually it wasn't.
Only in height and length.
Yeah. The actual footprint of the car was pretty much the same. The width of the car.
Yeah. Okay.
So in 10 years, cars are going to be even wider, unless the governments in the UK and in Europe and around the world put some sort of limit onto it.
It's a loophole, isn't it? Because obviously when they created those limits of 180 for a car and 255 for a heavy duty vehicle, SUVs didn't exist. It was something new.
Yeah.
So they should have implemented legislation for this new category of car when they first came on the market.
Yeah, a long time ago.
But they didn't.
No. And I suppose that this limit of 2 meters 55, they needed to impose a limit so that they could build roads, and they would know that the roads were wide enough for the vehicles. So there's a standard sort of width of a road, I suppose. And they know that the vehicles can work on that. Okay.
Can drive on it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what's going to happen.
If you were at work and you were offered an SUV, a Fiat Doblo, or a
Volkswagen Transporter California.
Oh, I was going to say when the new buses.
The new electric bus. Yeah. No, I'd go for the Volkswagen California.
Why would somebody give you a Volkswagen California as a company car?
I don't know. Maybe I need to get a job with Volkswagen.
I don't think they give them out as Volkswagen, as company cars, though, do they? You
never know. Look, I might make it, if I get a job with Volkswagen, I might make it part of my contract that I must have a Volkswagen California, or else I refuse to work for them.
Yep, right, okay. All right, well, here's a final question. Do you think people who have SUVs are more willing to give a lift to work to their fellow colleagues than people who have cars that are not SUVs? What kind of a person drives an SUV? Are they benevolent?
I don't think so, no.
Ooh. You're just jealous.
Okay, maybe I'm just jealous of people who've got an SUV. I don't know. I don't think the car says anything about, unless you're driving like a a Ferrari when you're 77 years old, something like that. That's maybe says something about you as a person. But I think, as just a car for generally driving around with you and your family, I don't think an SUV says anything particularly, does it?
I don't know. I don't have one.
I don't think
Whatever
so.
the car is, the dog would go in it.
Yeah. I mean, for us, can the dog fit in the car? Is he gonna make a mess of the seats? Oh, let's put a cover down. Yeah.
That's as far as it goes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's it for this week. I'll speak to you next week.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening. We hope you liked our podcast, and please don't forget to subscribe and stay connected with us. Until next time, goodbye.